At least you know. Like, what you don't know is what crushes you, but if you do know, at least you know. Either you could decide to ignore it at that stage, or better yet, just take some actions and start improving it.
We all have challenges. I don't want to make it sound like everything is great over here. We have huge success. We also have a mature brand. And so that leads us to a lot of franchisees who have been in our system for a very long time, which is fantastic, but also poses its own challenges. And so we all have these ups and downs and varying challenges.
And he's like, look, there's not very many one-way doors. One-way door meaning you go in, there's no way to back out.
Imagine the loyalty. Loyalty comes from the top. And so you showed leadership and showing that loyalty, that person's going to be stuck to you.
You got to be rigid on a destination, but not the journey to get to that destination, because you just don't know what's going to happen.
Again, it's a great way to have a high accelerated growth while still having the community roots and keeping the soul of our brand intact as we scale in that type of a way.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Tech Bites. Today, we have Healey Mendicino from Port of Subs. She's the CEO there. We wanted to dig into her expertise and discuss the path of growth that she's taken personally, and then being at the helm of a about 130 unit brand, how she's able to manage the brand. She's dealing with a legacy brand. She's going into franchising and franchising the brand. So we're going to learn a lot about what and how she's gotten into the position and how she's managing growth moving forward. So with that said, Healey, I'd like to give you the spot, introduce yourself a little bit, and I really want to learn how you've gone from how you've ended up at the CEO position. So if you could touch base on that, I would greatly appreciate that.
Super. Thanks, Hamid. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here today and share a little bit about my franchising passion. I love the franchising business model, so it's always a great topic, and looking forward to the time with you. Thanks for having me. So my original background was in commercial real estate and retail development, site selection, and development of that commercial real estate. So then here's a fun fact. Through that process, I came to know Port of Subs. This was many, many years ago, and I was the 100th franchisee. So having the commercial real estate, being a franchisee and operator gives me a very unique lens in regard to how I think about the franchisees, how I think about the franchise network, and how I think about our growth, because I've been there in that position from starting in the morning to figuring out payroll and all the things that entrepreneurs deal with. So I really gives me an advantage in making those decisions for the brand. Our brand, as you say, it's 54-year legacy brand, and it started on very simple concepts. Serve great food, treat people well, and be a true part of the communities that we serve. And those are concepts that we still hold very dear. So that's kind of the foundation for this unique position that we were in. For the first 50 years, we were founder-led and family-led, and they built an incredible brand. I've been around the brand almost 30 years in those capacities, and I rejoined Port of Subs in 2013 as the EVP, and in 2023, we got acquired by Area 15 Ventures Partners, and we are now moving forward into national expansion. So it's such an exciting time to be a true legacy brand with amazing heritage, beautiful brand loyalty, and now embarking on national expansion through the regional developer model. So it's an exciting time. It's a big shift for the brand, and we're well into that national expansion, and I can share about that as we talk today.
Amazing. Yeah. So you really, well, first of all, you were the franchisee of the brand because you went there, you liked it so much, and you decided to go in. And then you took some time off and then came back as EVP and now took over as CEO after the acquisition. Is that
Yes.
about right?
Yes,
Okay.
that's the abridged version for sure. And by the way, our food is so delicious. And if you're going to be a restaurant brand, you better have delicious food. And our food is off the chart wonderful. So I'm anxious for people to try it.
I think the more authentic that it is, the better, and um, everybody relates better that way. At least I do. So I think so. As I was saying a little bit earlier, like the core foundations have remained the same, and even looking into my own business, the core concept, regardless whether you're a restaurant, a tech company, or whatever business, your core foundation has to be good. So obviously, like for us in a technology company, that means our products or solutions have to be really good. They have to work. For restaurants, the food has to be really good. You have to have great service to back up that thing, back up whatever product services it is that you're offering. And if you just do those things really well, then everything else just kind of falls in line. But I'm curious to drill into like how you're scaling. So you guys are now going out trying to franchise, expand from a regional brand to a national brand. I've never been to any of your locations. I don't think we have any here, but I think there's some coming. But how are you gonna scale what has worked in one region and scale it across the entire country?
Yes. So we are utilizing the regional developer model to grow. What that really means is multi-unit operators can purchase and control a territory and be able to grow in their region. And part of that is they're required to build a flagship. And what that really means to us is not only the logistical advantages of being able to train for your region and build a franchise network. This program is to build a franchise network, create wealth for everybody, opportunities for everybody. But that flagship is important because it's about being part of the community. We stay very community focused, very community based. As we think about going into national expansion, we want to be your neighborhood sandwich shop in every single market that we touch and really be part of what's happening in those communities as part of the soul of our brand. And can we do that nationally? That's our mission. And I would say this, when anything that we do in life is based on what we think about, what our outcomes are, what our goals are that build into that. And, it's kind of interesting as a legacy brand moving forward in this kind of a way is very exciting for us. I must do a small public service announcement because when you talk about, oh, we're going to have 10 regional developers or 18, we have 18 regional developers right now, and we're opening up 9 new markets. And this is not for the faint of heart. People get all excited about it. Oh my gosh, I want to do that in my brand. I want to do regional developer model. It's a fantastic way to grow. It's amazing because it allows you to have that community touch in the markets, creating incredible opportunities for entrepreneurs and the regional developers across the country. But again, it comes along with a sincere discipline about the regional developers and the franchisees that you bring into the system. And then switching from that regional development really is about preparing those systems and the infrastructure and having discipline to do that. New franchisees is the sexy fun part, right? But really addressing those fundamentals of the franchisees we bring in the system and preparing the infrastructure and the systems for scaling is paramount. And that's been our big focus right after the acquisition and preparing for this type of growth.
Excellent. Actually, that leads to our next point. So, transitioning from family owned to now being owned by another group, how has that changed? Or are there any lessons to learn from those who are obviously there's been a lot of M&A in the restaurant space in the last probably year and a half, 2 years, I would say. But what lessons have you learned and has it helped or what what does that look like?
Yes, a family run versus we say PE. Luckily for us, yes, it's kind of PE, but it's really family office. And we were acquired by Dave Liniger and Gail Liniger and Adam Contos, who are the founders of Remax. And so they are really a family office and obviously global franchising experts. And so it's a huge shift of mentality and growth. And what the Port of Subs was acquired to be able to scale nationally. And then, of course, they push for international. I said, let's do our country first. It'll be amazing. So it's a very, very different mindset. It's a very, very different shift. Obviously, the resources that go along with that are really helpful. You have to have the resources to have a very aggressive growth plan. And I think those inflection points are often where some of our emerging brands and our brands that are at varying stages, particularly those under 100 units, can struggle a little bit because you really need to have some of that investment before that revenue catches up. And that can be a tough tension point. And so being disciplined about planning for that is really important. And so we still take that very seriously in this situation. But really, those resources and the franchising expertise have made a tremendous difference in the trajectory and the philosophies of a high growth system.
Interesting. So obviously, yeah, Remax is all franchised all the way around the country and probably the world as well. So they're taking that concept and now they're applying it to a restaurant industry, and I'm assuming it's the same playbook for them.
It is, except for restaurants are very different than real estate. And so it's really been a fun educational process. Yes, Remax has 9,000 franchisees in 120 countries. And so massive expertise. However, no restaurant experience. So it's been a really nice marriage and a great learning experience for all of us to be in this space. I think that the biggest thing, we have brick and mortar. And so those that time horizon to open units is different. You're in a service business. You have, digital front and all of that. So you can sell your services right away. And those who don't have brick and mortar have that advantage that you just have to master, the digital space to grow your brand. For us, growth equals having brick and mortar. So that's been a big education process amongst the group. And again, that early investment toward preparing for what that looks like to open those restaurants has been a really big deal and takes a lot of planning. I can't express enough when you're an emerging brand or you're an early brand, or even when you're getting close to your 100th restaurant, which is fun, and a huge milestone in franchising, which we all know. I think the fun, sizzly, sexy part is getting a franchisee and getting franchisees into your brand. It's super fun, but it's the fundamentals and being obsessed with the fundamentals and that planning piece of how you're specifically going to grow your brand that is very important. And as we know, in restaurants and in business, nothing is perfect. So the best laid plans often veer off, but at least it's your North Star and your grounding point for when things do veer off.
I agree 100%. You got to have some sort of a plan, but you have to be. I think I heard this thing that said, like, you got to be rigid on a destination, but not the journey to get to that destination because you just don't know what's going to happen. So, you mentioned about resources. I'm curious what resources you're referring to. So, in order to, like, you guys have spent some time building, last probably couple of years, building the resources, all the infrastructure that is needed. Most everyone kind of skips over that, or they don't know what they don't know. So what have you guys learned and what have you put in place in order to prepare the next phase of growth for Port of Subs?
Yes, that's a great question. And it's different for every brand. And so, for us having 130 unit footprint is very different than someone who's got 10 or 20 units. Luckily, we are in an amazing age. I love this digital age, and I know that's part of your environment. So maybe you can shed some light as well. But
Yeah, I'm getting on that. I'm now passing. I'm 50% through my life most likely. So, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about, but the next generation is just crushing me. So I can't imagine how you're feeling.
Oh God, really trying hard to keep up. Luckily, we have a lot of very talented young people in our organization, very purposefully, especially in the marketing and digital departments. But it's been very fun, and it is an incredible time to be alive. The resources we talk about is, as a smaller startup brand, not everybody has huge financial to start with. You have to start with financial resources to be able to build staffing. Staffing, obviously, high, overhead can be very high, and sometimes you need people that you can't quite yet afford because you're just building your royalty streams. And so, balancing that can be a little bit tricky. But one advantage is you have to have a system. It doesn't matter. Systems thinking, systems is what makes it work. Making decisions by reporting is critical towards success. And these are all, fundamentals. There's a lot of platforms out there that are not that are within reach, even for an emerging brand, a starting brand. But you've got to make a decision on how you're going to handle your systems. For us, we have our tech stack is several different modules from larger companies. We were able to do that and have this entire life cycle end to end. But the bottom line is, it doesn't matter what system you use. You have the underlying work that you do. I'm very, very detail oriented about the workflows that we have and how are we going to get our franchise? How do we make this easy for the operators? If there's friction for the operators, first of all, it's not fun. But more importantly, there's got to be a specific path for a franchisee. These are entrepreneurs and independent business owners who are highly intelligent. They want to run their own lives. They want to have some independence, but they're buying a system from you as a franchisor, and or even if you're a multi-unit franchisee, it's the same process, really, about marshaling that. How are we going to manage our data, use our data, and make sure that things are easy for our operators, and also I speak a lot in our company about the use of technology because technology is a multiplier. We need to utilize it so that our technology can do the work for us wherever possible. And we can go crazy talking about AI because I'm all excited. But it's so we can spend more time with our franchisees or our team members or building our managers and really focusing on the fact that whether you're in a service business or a brick and mortar, service is key, and making things easy for the franchisees and operators is really paramount. So just mentally thinking about how do we choose a system that's easy to use, that helps us multiply so we can spend more time with the human beings and not just buried in the technology for technology's sake. I think that's important too in focusing on performance outcomes.
So, just to summarize it, I hear you say obviously financial needs, which is going to power people. So, bring in the right people in, which then leads to proper systems in place. And then finally, the right technology to enable everything to kind of come together.
Yes. And
Amazing.
and being really honest with yourself about where you are with your financial resources and then planning accordingly toward a really great outcome for yourself.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think you touched base on something that I really learned the lesson in the last 6 months. It's look, everything is metrics driven. I went to a conference and the speaker said there was a person that got on and they asked a few questions. What's the top line revenue? What's the net profit? What's the gross margin? How do you get customers today, and what's holding you back from um, becoming a 10 million, 50 million, $100 million company? And some people just kind of got on and just didn't know the numbers. And he's like, hey guys, like if you don't know your metrics, you have no problems. Just go back, figure out the metrics, and then come back. But you're not ready. If you don't know your metrics, it does not matter. Nothing else matters. Like you've got to master the metrics and let the numbers speak for themselves, which kind of comes back to your point about systems. Like I've spent a ton of time putting systems in place and workflows and how this happens and like kind of map everything out along with my team to ensure that the experience from start to end is very well defined and we don't run into problems. And I think a lot of people just simply don't do that. I see companies and I've got other people that I'm like colleagues, etc., that are like, hey, we forgot to do this. And I'm like, how like forgot? Like how? Like how do you forget to do this? Like it's a big part of that. Like that's how you make money. You can't forget to make money. So I think those systems are critical, back to your point. So I think you're absolutely right. I've been doubling and tripling down on systems, processes, knowledge bases, documenting everything, creating visual workflows to make sure that everybody knows what the process is. And again, it doesn't matter whether it's a tech company or a franchising company. You're right. Your franchisees have to feel like you've got this under control, that they're buying a system from you and they expect that system to already have been proven. Otherwise, they would have just started their own sub shop.
Absolutely. And I love this conversation because, again, whether you're especially if you're emerging, or especially when you're in that, as you mentioned, 20 and 30 and 35 units or 50, whatever the number is under 100, there are a lot of stress points along the way. I love this conversation about benchmarking. And remember, I said early in the conversation, be obsessed with your fundamentals. And people skip over that a lot, like you mentioned at your conference. And again, it's because it's not, those things for many people are not very fun, right? It's a little,
They're not.
it's
Yeah.
just,
And by the way, like even I don't know some of them, and the reason I was asking, sorry, but real quick, like the reason that it's so difficult, it's because you've got to go through multiple systems to figure that number out. It's like top line revenue is easy, but you get into some of the details, and it's like, oh man, I got to go here, find this, go there, find that, and just having this Frankenstein tech solution behind the scene makes it very difficult, inconvenient. Therefore, you just kind of ignore it. But go on.
Well, no, it's so important, and I think that there's a tendency. Again, it's not fun. You kind of got to slog through it. I like the details, so for me, it's okay. But the deal is, to your point, you have to know your numbers, and I don't care if you have one franchisee or three franchisees; those are your franchisees. And if you don't have a fancy tech stack, that's okay. But you better know your benchmarks and or be gathering that data along the way to be able to say, okay, restaurants are not perfect, business is not perfect, no matter what your brand is. So really, performance is about those guardrails, right? Trying to keep it within the range, because there's no such thing as, there's no landing point for a net profit or a sales or whatever. It's a living, breathing thing in business. So being able to establish those benchmarks is really important, and have that reporting be very easy. And P&Ls are fine, they're so critical to a business, but that daily and that weekly view of your reporting, and what those, knowing your benchmarks first of all, and then being able to go, okay, I don't know why I'm out of range over here, but I'm out of range, so that you can adjust those levers along the way for ultimate performance success. And again, it's not a
Absolutely.
it's not a perfection, but that's the foundation, and those fundamentals are critical.
Agreed. Yeah, at least you know. Like what you don't know is what crushes you, but if you do know, at least you know. Either you could decide to ignore it at that stage, or better yet, just take some actions and start improving it. And I think fundamentally, once you understand the problem, like I've got some challenges of my own that I'm dealing with. And I was talking to somebody else, and he's like, "Look, you've been dealing with this for like, months and months and months. So why is it so difficult?" I'm like, "I have no idea." And he's like, "All right, let's talk through it." And we just kind of workshopped it in like 10 or 15 minutes. It's like, it's not that complicated. You got to do one, then two, then three, then four, five, six, and then like that's it. Like just go execute on one and worry about nothing else except one. Take the first step. And I think that first step is where, myself included, we all get hung up on, because it's the hardest step. And I had a director of marketing. She was just amazing. And one day she just threw her hands in the air and she's like, "You know what, Hamed? It is really hard for me to take the first step." I'm like, "Great. So so is it for me.
Let's do
Now
it
that we know
together.
what the problem exactly. Now that we know what the problem is, let's just solve for that step number one." But amazing conversation around that. I love having these discussions and conversations, because again, we're all in business, and in business, regardless of what you're in, the challenges remain the same. We all have to stay in the game. It's not winning the game. There's no winning in business. It's really just maintaining and staying in the game that matters.
Two things on that I'm going to add about that, taking that first step. So we talk about something in our company, in our organization, when we come across problems. We all have challenges. I don't want to make it sound like everything is great over here. We have huge success. We also have a mature brand, and so that leads us to a lot of franchisees who have been in our system for a very long time, which is fantastic, but also poses its own challenges. And so we all have these ups and downs and varying challenges. But one of the things we do in our organization is we call it let's 3, 2, 1 it, because there aren't 18 options to a problem typically. And so we say, what are the three options to this problem? What are the two recommendations, and what's the one final solution, which in your instance is that first step. But it's, all of us can get overwhelmed. So many things we have to do all the time in every area, and this is going well and this is, and it's tough to figure out. You got to get that grounding, and then that's the process we use, is 3, 2, 1, and we all say, is this the best one? And then of course we should all be asking AI.
Of course, why not?
Let's increase our IQ. Instantly increase our IQ and productivity by learning to be really good at AI. And we're doing a deep exploration, and we're beginning to work on our AI playbook for our company. And I'm not like the 20-year-olds in our organization, so I lean on them a lot and say, okay, we're going to utilize this to maximize our productivity once again, so we can spend more time together and more time working on our fundamentals of building a great business, and try to remove those obstacles in our way when you're overwhelmed, they can feel insurmountable, to your point about the one step. So those are the two things that we focus on to try to help us through our challenges.
I agree. I think that 3-2-1 strategy is spot on. I learned that from Dan Martell. He calls it 1-3-1. But one problem, define the problem very clearly. Give me the three recommendations that you have. and then give me the one that you would go with, and we'll go from there. But same concept, whether 3-2-1, 1-3-1, etc. The point is define the problem very clearly, and then have your three top options, and then figure out which one makes sense. And you're not always going to make the right decision. And I've been I've made that mistake many times, where made a decision 6 months later, it's like, what was I thinking? So instead of beating myself up, I'm like, listen, at that time, with that information that I had, I made the right decision. That was the right decision that I made. So there's no going back. Now the information has changed. Yes, the answer has changed, but that doesn't mean that I should have made a different decision at that time. So
As we say, progress beats perfection.
100%. Yeah, just take the first step. So the big lesson I learned was just take the first step and forget everything else. Once you get in the pool, you'll figure out how to swim. I do want to get.
I'm just going to touch briefly on that, and I know we want to get on to some of the other topics that are very exciting. I get asked a lot, now that you're CEO, what advice would you give other executives? Doesn't have to be a CEO. And what comes to mind for me often is, to your point about making a decision with your best information and moving forward, there's no such thing as a perfect decision. Now, sometimes your outcome is exactly what you envisioned, but being able to know that as a leader, it doesn't matter what level leader you are throughout the organization, franchisee, store manager, in our environment, whatever those leaders are for you and your organization, and we are all leaders. That's what makes the difference in a successful company's leadership. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to know everything. And I think people get stuck a little bit because they're trying to be perfect, or they don't want to make a mistake, and that leads to paralysis. So that's usually my top advice to other leaders is, get as much information from the people around you that are talented and make your best decision and go for it. And like you said, you can now make a course correction 6 months later going, oops, that didn't work out the way I wanted it to. So now I need to go back and revisit that and make some changes. And I think that's really powerful and shouldn't be overlooked, what you just put on the table.
I agree 100%. And Jeff Bezos, I think, says it really well, exactly what you're saying and echoing. And he's like, look, there's not very many one-way doors. One-way door meaning you go in, there's no way to back out. Like if you make the wrong decision, the company's bankrupt. Like there's very few of those decisions, but there are a ton of two-way doors. You go in, you made a mistake, you walk back, and then you try again. So I think the concept of what you're describing is exactly that. Is it a one-way door or is it a two-way door? And we do that too. Like, how critical is this? If it's a one-way door, escalate up, ask for another person to review it. But if it's a two-way door and the downside is limited, make the decision, move on. You make a mistake, great, we lost $1,000, let's go back and retry it, and this time we do it better. And actually, I had this case happen to me just last week. One of our team members made a huge mistake. It just completely went off the SOP side and cost us probably like $30,000 or so.
Okay.
So it's not an easy mistake. But I was talking to my COO and I'm like, under normal circumstance, an executive will be like, all right, let's fire that individual. And I'm like, no, we're not going to fire that individual because they just learned a massive lesson at my expense. I just paid them $30,000 to learn that lesson. Yeah. They're never, ever going to repeat that mistake ever again. Right. So now is not the time to give them, now that I've built them up, it's not the time to hand them over to a competitor and say, I've taught this individual all this stuff. They've cost me a ton of money. That experience passes on to you. It's like, no, we just hold on to them. And again, like mistakes like that happens, just own up to it and go back, figure out what happened, which is what we did. And now we've updated SOPs and now everybody knows, hey, just don't do this. And that's how SOPs for us have been written anyway. We made a mistake. We went back, figured out why we made the mistake, wrote down what to do and what not to do, and then trained the whole team on that.
I love that. And you took action on it. And imagine that person that works for you. Imagine the loyalty. Loyalty comes from the top. And so you showed leadership and showing that loyalty, that person's going to be stuck to you like glue, and you took action. That's awesome. That's a great lesson.
Absolutely.
That's a great
So
lesson.
I do want to get into the next topic, but
Okay,
I,
let's
I
go.
also want to come back to the AI thing. So
Okay.
we do need a touch base on AI. So
Okay.
that we'll just kind of put a pin on that. But we talked about economics and know your numbers. That has come up with a lot of C levels that I talked to. I was talking to, the Dickies CEO, Laura. She brought it up and she was very adamant on it. Kendall Ware in this space, he's always adamant. Wade, almost all of these experts and CEOs that are in this space, I think one thing that they all have in common is they're focused so heavily on the economics and the P&L statement. So let's drill into that. I want to start with unit economics at your restaurant. So what's the AUV? What does that look like? What does the unit economic looks like at an individual location on average, and then work our way up?
Okay. So, of course, unit economics is everybody's top priority in any company. Call it whatever you want. I know largely in franchising, the bottom line is, franchising and successful franchises and franchise growth must start with with operator profitability. And again, we talk about those fundamentals. We have a really interesting, our AUV is just above 600,000, but here's the challenge for us. We separate our item 19 into 4 quartiles because as a mature brand, as a legacy brand, we have unusual metrics. For example, nearly 40% of our brand has been in our brand 15 years or more. Almost 18% of our brand has been there 20 years or more. It's highly unusual in a restaurant environment. And so what happens for us is we've got a lot of our new growth and our new people in our higher quartile. And we've got a lot of our single unit operators who've been in the brand a long time, and they're happy. They're super happy, and they're profitable. One of the advantages we have in our particular brand is we have a very efficient operating model. It's easy to operate. It's efficient, and the economics can work in those lower tiers. And so we think about our brand in 3 tiers. We have our top third, our middle, and our smaller guys at the bottom. So it gives a lot of noise to our AUV, and we also have nearly 25% non-traditional units, truck stops and airports and different things like that. So, but in any event, we're obsessed with operator profitability. And I also say this, because we've been around so long, markets will change in some of our legacy markets. The retail moves, and we've been there 30 years, for example. And so we use that data very particularly because when those things shift and we have underperforming units, that data is just as important as your high performing units because it tells you where your system is breaking down. And is it the operator? Is it the way that the operator won't engage any longer? And we do have some of that. So that is one of our challenges is dealing with legacy operators and our new operators. And they look very different today than they did 30 years ago. We've been franchising since 1986. And a lot of those people are still around.
So how do you manage those? So how do you support them? How do you deal with the guy who's got a has a single unit, has been there for 30 years, and it's like, hey, listen, like I've been here longer than you've been here, and I've owned the brand for X number of years. I'm happy where I am. I don't want to grow. This is my baby, and I'm gonna retain it forever as is. Versus the new guy who comes in and it's like, let's go. Like 600 is not enough. We got to do 1 million, and we got to do this. We got to do that. Like, obviously, 2 different mentality. One's aggressive on growth. One's like, hey, I'm happy with what I've got. Your job becomes very difficult, I assume, and you have to balance the two. How do you do that?
Well, it sounds like you're intimately knowledgeable about our franchisees. You said it so perfectly, truly. That's exactly what we have. And so, one of the things, it's been a challenge. And like you said, I've been here longer than you. What do you know? We've never done it that way, and so on and so forth. And so, our job, franchises don't fail because they're old or their legacy. As a matter of fact, you have to honor that heritage. But what happens is it's if you don't evolve, and that's top of mind, that you must evolve, especially in this day and age. So one of the things that we've done, a lot of it is relational, right? You can't just put somebody's, make them drink the water. But so a lot of it is relational and getting them to come along. One advantage that we're very excited about is on the marketing side, especially, especially the smaller operators. To your point, they're like, I'm happy behind the slicer. No, I don't want incremental sales from building a catering business. And they've owned their restaurants free and clear for such a long time. So in our brick and mortar and in our brand, you can, adjust it for whatever brand you might be in. But we focus on the digital piece because it's available now in a modern time. And we're evolving our marketing so that we really try to handle that piece for the franchisees. I kept hearing all of us say, gosh, franchisees just won't go out and do marketing. They just won't go out and do marketing. So after 10 years of hearing this, I'm like, okay, guys, franchisees won't do marketing, yet we just want to hit them on the head with a stick. And we make the tools available and we do all these things. The people who absorb it, all, like you said, the new people are all like, they are going to do everything. And the middle people, we want to work on the middle people because they're very engaged and they want to get going. But we're really focusing on strategies where we can use digital platforms to help build in our business, our incremental sales. And our big lift is in catering and online ordering, off premises food and delivery. And so let's just do it for them in a digital world. They're paying for it anyway. Let's take that off their plate and allow them to focus on being great with the customer, all the things that we know make a fantastic restaurant, and be those operators and drive that traffic to them when we've said all along that they just struggle to do that, and trying to take that off their plate.
100%. I totally agree with you. Like yeah, they signed up for a franchisee and they became a franchisee. They want to run their own business, etc. But for them to figure everything out, it's just a brutal path. Like I've been through that path several times by starting these companies, and now I have a funny joke. I'm like TLO, like the last one was the last one. Like I'm done. Like TLO. I'm not doing any. I'm not going through that painful process again. So when I'm like, I would suspect that when they're signing up for a franchised operation, I think the franchisor's obligation is to do that. And it sounds like you guys have taken a much more proactive, involved approach rather than, hey, our job is to give you the tools, you have to go execute. But you're saying, hey, we'll execute on your behalf for you to drive that incremental revenue. Is that what
Only
I'm hearing?
only in the marketing side, and they still have to do all the work. It's their business. But yes, and what makes that possible is because of the incredible time that we're in right now with all the digital. In the olden days, you'd have to go out and meet with everybody and have boots on the ground. And by the way, it's still successful for restaurants. That local store marketing, being part of your community and spending time with the schools and the events and the kids and all the things that happen there, those are the restaurants that are in our top tier. And as you mentioned, focusing on those top numbers and that top AUV. But for the people who, uh, struggle with that, being able to do it digitally is what makes all the difference. Because otherwise,
Of course.
you couldn't, it just wouldn't work with the manpower that you have and so on. And the bottom line is this: sometimes it's okay to tell your franchisees if you're in a legacy brand. I know a lot of the emerging brands and people who are kind of in the middle may not have this issue, but maybe they do. Maybe you have a franchisee who thought it was going to be different, or they didn't realize how much work it was going to be, regardless of what your line of business is. And sometimes it's okay to tell them that it's okay to sell their business and find an operator who's really engaged. That changes the complexion of what that business looks like. And so we have strategies for that as well. And telling them it's okay that if you sell your restaurant, it's been a long time.
Agreed. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I
Business.
got fired out of Best Buy, and that was like the best thing that happened. Like at the time, it sucked. I remember I was sitting in the parking or in my car in the parking lot, and it just anyway. Like at the time, I thought game over. Like I just got fired. I think it was my first job that I actually, yeah, it was my first job that I had gotten fired, and it was my last job. But had that not happened, I don't think I would be here where I am today. So I agree. Like sometimes if it's just not a fit, it's not a fit. Don't force the solution. Our CTO always says that. It's like never force a solution. Are you doing this because you're familiar with it, or are you doing it because it's the right thing to do? And you should
Okay.
always lean towards that right thing to do because it's the right approach. And now, You may not know how to do it, but go figure it out, because that's the approach. Don't just try to do it, an old-fashioned way, or just because you know this path and you just take that path.
I love that story. And think about what we're talking about. Whether you're a single unit operator, a multi-unit operator, or a franchisor, this is not, I mean, you can't be a wimpy group. What drives a person to do that is not somebody who would like their life to just be complacent and easy. These are people who are feeling limited some way in their life and don't like it and want to feel limitless. Why would you start a brand? It's a very, very difficult thing to do. It's exciting and it's fun, and it creates opportunities. We talk a lot about changing lives. This is an opportunity. Franchising is the greatest wealth creation vehicle and environment for entrepreneurs to create opportunities and leadership opportunities. I love franchising. I could talk about this all day long, but again, you're going to have a certain group of people, and your audience here, again, are a fierce group of people. You don't go operate 5 or 6 restaurants and not have a very ability to go, okay, I'm going to challenge myself, and I'm going to challenge those around me, and I'm going to make this work. That's the that's the battle cry of entrepreneurs, right? I'm going to make this
Agreed.
work.
Yeah, you're gonna have to find a path. So let's get into some of the ways that you guys are growing sales. So every restaurant that I talk to says, "Hey, yeah, we have loyalty programs. We can, we track loyalty guests, etc." I have a very strong viewpoint on loyalty and how it should be done from a consumer point of view, from my point of view, going into the restaurants, etc. But I'm curious how you guys look at loyalty, and how do you drive retention? Because I believe that in the restaurant space, the gold mine is in retention, not acquisition. I think a lot of restaurants, they master acquisition really well. They're able to do the community events and bring people in, but it feels like there's a disconnect between acquisition and retention. I'm curious how you guys view it, and how do you take on the retention versus acquisition talk points?
Yes, this is a great topic. And again, I know that's, such a big part of your thought process. Um,
100%. Yeah, I'm
I know.
super passionate on that side, because I think it's the highest leveraged thing that any restaurant can do in order to gain the benefits. Like it's so high leveraged, and you've already done all the work. And actually, like this is your thing. I ask you the question, but like even with my salespeople, I'm like, listen, when you come in every day, you don't focus on the people that you've never talked to before. You focus on the ones that you have an agreement out, that you've done all the work, 2 months of work to get them to the agreement stage. You start with them because it's the lowest hanging fruit. And I think retention for restaurants, it's the same. You focus on everybody that's on the last stage, that have been there, that know the brand, that are familiar, that have had good experiences, and then you work backwards. But I'm again back to you. So
Yeah, no, it's great. I agree with you, and I suspect that no matter what your business is, or most businesses, perhaps not all, depending on your model, but that to your point, retention is key. And so we talk a lot about this. Your first visit, that's your experiment. Your second visit is a really important visit, because now you've created, now they're interested. By the fourth visit, that's when you start creating loyalty. And when you think about it, that retention funnel, if it's only 4, where you're able to build that relationship, is very key. And so again, in a digital world, we do a handful of things. One, loyalty is important. And you and I chatted about this briefly. We'd like to have every customer we have on our loyalty program, but while we have an incredible percentage, it's still a fraction of the entire customer base. So in a perfect world, it would be a much higher number, which is what we target for sure. We rolled a new program, a brand new loyalty program last July, to make the digital experience. Our focus is frictionless digital experience, with some gamification. I think reward programs do a couple of things. It's not one size fits all. It's utilizing current technology to be able to give the offers and the language to your customers, meet them where they are, not only in channel, but also in messaging. Like if you sent me a special for something that I just simply don't eat, then it just falls by the wayside. So utilizing our data to be able to say, Hamid, I know you love this, and here, I'm going to try to gain your frequency, and I'm going to give you a special on what you love to get you in here, and also giving rewards sooner. That feels really fun, right? Gamified, and now you get small rewards along the way. I think a lot of loyalty programs, you have to do something that takes you so long to get a reward, it doesn't feel like a reward. Um, and I think that's an important piece in terms of how that messaging works and inviting people in.
I agree. I think like jumping through hoops is just crazy. I was talking to another person that runs like creates website etc. in the space and creates like experiences. And it's like, imagine like I go to your restaurant website and like right off the bat, the first thing I see is like, give me your phone number. It's like, give me your email, join the loyalty program. It's like, I have no idea who you are. I'm just trying to like dabble in, see if it's even something that's a fit. But or even like when you're going into the restaurant, etc. It's just you're creating so much friction by inappropriately asking at the wrong time. When it's their first visit, they're not going to download that app. They're just not going to join that loyalty right off the bat. You got to earn that over time. And you just have to have that mechanism in place in order to earn that loyalty over time. So in terms of retention stuff, you guys sounds like you're doing some rewards, you're doing some gamification. I'd like to better understand how you guys are doing that and what has worked for you guys.
Yes, and so, our app is really cool. It's kind of funny, I have these great conversations with our team about this because they're all, our our oldest person is 40. Everybody else is in their 20s and 30s, which I really value, because I'm kind of the old one of the bunch, which is fine. But it gives us a nice, understanding of what's happening in the modern times. I use the browser. Okay, I shouldn't admit that because our app is amazing and it's awesome, but I'm still sitting at my computer all day. But that's so it's kind of an interesting approach. But our app is amazing to make it really fun, make it look visually appealing, make the whole ordering process. I mean, frictionless ordering is really, really critical, and not having any glitches along the way. Nobody likes that. You'll just get right out of the app, but also just visually and graphically being able to unlock your rewards. That's been a huge lift for us. And it's something that's very simple and it feels very fun. And that's why we made the decision based on all the data that of how often people open and what they get and what excites them to really reframe our entire loyalty program so that you can unlock those rewards. And we try to give one after the first and second visit, even if it's something really small. We can do that and it gets people excited because there's only three ways that you build a business, right? Of any business. You retain the customers that you have, which is great. But you get more frequency, is what I was thinking through. The existing customers you have, along with retention, is also frequency. You get more customers, or you sell them more of what you offer to either one of those groups. That's the only three ways to build your business. And so if
Agreed.
we can use that unlocking of those rewards and also providing offers that are compelling and appealing and keep us top of mind, that'll help increase the frequency while we're trying to gain new customers through other overarching methods.
I agree 100%. Like I call my pizzas in. I, I don't. I call it in. I
On the
just call it
phone?
in. Yeah, on the phone. I don't know. I like ordering it over the phone. That's just
Okay.
me. I don't use the app. I don't go to the website. I just
That's right.
call it in.
That's funny.
So
That's
and
awesome.
you know, different people are different. Like I'm driving. I like if I last thing I want to do is just be on the app as I'm driving and I'm like call it in and I just like I'm talking to the guy and I'm like, hey, here's what I want, da da da. I'll be there in 15 minutes. So it's more convenient when I'm driving. I don't want to be on the app. I don't want to be on it. I don't want to be on a text, etc. But again, you just got to meet them where they are. Like last week, I was at a dinner with a friend, and his son called and he's like, "Oh yeah, so what did you order?" It's like, "Oh, I ordered like this chicken stuff and what did you order?" And I ask him, what did he order? What did he do?" And he spent like $25 on freaking like some chicken sandwich stuff. And I'm like, "That is crazy." Like, but DoorDash. And he's what, 14?
Wow.
But it's, like you've got all these younger generation that it's not their money. They've never earned it. They haven't had to work yet for to make money to realize, hey, that's like an hour and a half, 2 hours of labor that has to go in to pay for that meal. But they use DoorDash. It's convenient, it's easy. Obviously, he can't drive, so for them, they're okay with paying that premium and paying that cost and being on that app. So that's like I tell everybody, I'm like, look, third party, like you would have completely missed that order. They're willing to pay a premium. You're deciding not to take that money because you think that they're not willing to pay for it. So enable that channel. Like some people will immediately download an app and they'll go through the app because that's what they like. But if the experience on their browser or on their phone is also really good, then you probably don't need an app. Like they could just do it easily on the browser. So regardless of where they are, and some people still call in orders. So
Well, imagine if you received, whether it was your text or your email or whatever your chosen channel was, imagine if you received an order where they said, hey, Hamid, tell you what, call us between these hours or call us and we'll give you a free cheesy bread or whatever. That's meeting you where you are, how you like to order. You're welcomed in, and you might be reminded, you might have it twice in a month or 3 times in a month versus the one time if you receive that, that type of that's the focus that we have is meet your customers where they want to be met and give them offers to increase frequency for things that they like to buy, as opposed to trying to get them to try something else that they really don't want or don't like.
yeah, agreed. I think customization and personalization. I always say, I worked with a brand, and that's how I got into this space. At the time, they were absolutely crushing it. They had 2.2 million people in their subscriber list in 2012. That's like, that was a game changer. I don't think anyone else that I know of had that many based on their size, had that many email lists. And by the way, the process was painful. You went into the restaurant, they had a comment card. You would fill out, write down on a piece of paper your first name, last name, email, phone number, and then managers would collect it and then they would send it to the corporate office every day. They would scan it in, give it to another team that manually sat there and just typed it in. Imagine 2.2 million people manually got typed in. But then on the other hand, they would send out kids it free first Tuesday of every month. And it's like, hey guys, like I don't have kids. Why am I getting this? It's like, they just kind of like there was no way to personalize, segment that out. But today, brands are still doing that. And I'm like, here we are, what, 14, 15, 17 years later, and they're still sending the same offer to everybody. Like if they don't have kids, they're not going to respond. If they're vegetarian and you send them meat specials, it's just not going to work. You gotta personalize that.
Great example. But look at the foundation of that. Foundation of that in that example is that those team members, that it was important to the company, it was important to the organization. So the team members were executing even in a super manual way. And I don't know how that looks for other people's business, those who have loyalty programs. For us, if our team members are engaged in that and they show it as important and make it fun, because fun is fun, then, and you can get free things, that's also the foundation of how that can work. It's got to be from that front line upward, not just in the digital space. So it's kind of interesting.
Agreed. Yeah.
2 million's a lot. It's wonderful.
That's a lot of people, and still today it's still a lot. And I think at that time they probably were hovering around like 60, 70 units, and it just kept growing, and it was pretty impressive what they did. But again, they just you do what you have to do in order to stay in the game. So
Yeah, absolutely.
getting on to like another topic, you touched base on systems, SOPs, building the systems in place. I'm curious to know, obviously, you've had a couple of years to prepare for that.
Yes.
What systems have you put in place? What are the core foundational parts that you've installed? What does that look like?
Yes. You mean specifically like which programs and that type of thing, or just the overall
Just
strategy?
architecturally, like, hey, done. You can name them if you want, but if you want to keep them private, that's totally fine. But I'm curious what systems actually have been put in place, like in terms of maybe technology, in terms of like recipe management, or like how do you guys look at systems?
Yes, that's a great question. I'm very passionate about systems as well, because then you remove a lot of the chaos and can focus on, as we talk about, the relationships and all of that. It's a relationship business. So we had baseline systems already, but talking about, I would say to the team, okay, we might be doing 10 units. You have to be thinking when it's 50 units and 100 units and so on. We have 18 regional developers, and we now have 450 units under contract for development over the next 5 years. However, you have to build those. You have to find a piece of real estate and build it and train it and open it. So our systems are, because of the brick and mortar and construction, add a lot to it. So we use Fran Connect for our CRM, our repository, and our field ops visits, our both our marketing and our operations. A lot of brands have their FBC does marketing and ops. We separate those functions. We feel that they're very different, and we like to have more touch points with our franchise community. So we started with that. And in really working on elevating our workflows, we've chosen a very simple product. We just use Smartsheet for that. They have a new dashboard. And again, I'm not doing plugs for anybody, but you have to choose a system. And we've made some poor decisions in the past that weren't, what we were promised isn't what we received. So we've gotten better at vetting those, and AI helps us with that as well. We didn't have that back, even wasn't even to this degree as it is now a few years ago. But I think there's a lot of great programs out there for every level of brand, and just being able to align with that. What I would say in that regard is, whatever platforms you're choosing for systemization, ask that brand for 2 happy references before you move forward. Some of them can't provide that, and that's how a red flag for you. That's been a really fast, effective way for us to know. And give me a couple customers that I can really talk through this with. But in any event, being able to have those systems, but just like anything, you can have the best technology in the universe, but you've got to understand the underlying system and spend the time on being very particular about it. And so for us, post acquisition, which was April of 2023, we're coming up on our 3rd year, really was 2023 was getting stabilized with the new acquisition. 2024 was building the team, and 2025, starting in 24, but 25 is finalizing that infrastructure. And really that amounts to, I keep saying it, spending the time on being particular about what that is, so that when you have 10 and 20 and 50 and 100 units in varying stages of development, or maybe for service businesses, it's intake of customers and how that intake happens for that customer to make their experience very smooth as they learn to become a really great franchisee. And so for us, it was really, those are our main. And now we built our own. We have an incredible marketing and digital team who built our training programs. We have our own portal. And so we've got a vast body of knowledge and data that has actually been built internally, because we have the talented team to be able to do that. So we've got basically 3 buckets of areas that are, while you come into the system, how you develop your units. And then the portal that we have is for post opening, for all the things that relate to performance and manuals and all that type of thing. So.
Interesting. So then let's talk about this. It sounds like you've taken a hybrid approach, but when and how do you decide to build versus buy?
Great question. So we're back to resources again. Depends on how much financial resource you have to allocate to both team members, internal. We've had this big conversation even in regard to websites. Are we better having an outsource if you have an inside person? So depending on the discipline within the organization, we opted for outside based on, we're still a growing brand. And so in some areas, particularly website or digital, if you have one person and they leave, it's a big gap. And I felt like that was a very big single point of failure for us on things that are so important. And so, and maybe it costs you a little more theoretically, but we went with organizations that have depth to them. And I know there's a lot of talented freelance or 2-person organizations, but for us, that felt like a lot of risk as well. And so we wanted to have a partner with other organizations that have multiple layers. Doesn't have to be 12 layers, but it's got to at least be a couple, so that that single point of failure goes away, and that we have redundancy based upon their systems. We look to industry best where possible. And we look at the teams that we have. What is it really going to look like? Because even if you have strong team members in different areas, someone's got to manage that process and still have a vision for what that is. And, I think people skip requirements a lot. Whenever you're embarking on anything major, you got to have requirements so that you know what you're trying to achieve and be able to put those pieces in place to even make the decision of outside versus inside. What's it going to cost to go outside? What's it going to cost to go inside? Once again, not the fun part of the business for many,
Yeah.
but it's necessary. Have the discipline to do that, and you will solve a lot of problems in your business before they even occur, and try to minimize the problems best you can.
I agree, and I think that single point of failure, a lot of people just don't pay attention to that. And I'm a pretty big opponent of like looking at, I call them SPFs internally because we refer to it so often. What are the SPFs in this design, in this environment? And yeah, even for us, like when we hire too. Like it's like, hey, they could get sick, they could have something, or they want to take a vacation. Like you just can't afford to shut the, like if it's critical enough, you're gonna have to start with two people. And usually that's your biggest single point of failure, is the human capital, because it's so critical. And if that individual that knows everything leaves and you don't have SOPs, you don't have all those things documented, then oh my god, like what are you going to do? And I think that's where we've even internally ourselves, we've always opted out to say, hey, we want a team, we don't want a single individual. And when we go out, we ensure that we don't hire, you know, companies and people that have that single point of failure. So, and ultimately we outsource the output, not the inputs.
I love
I
that.
tell them, like, I don't care. Like I really don't care if it's one person or 10 people. I'm paying for the outcome. Deliver the outcome. And if you fail to deliver the outcome, then we have a problem. And I used to just simply measure strictly on that, but I learned another lesson is, yes, that's the outcome I'm measuring, but give me a roadmap. Give me a journey. Like you're going from LA to New York, where do I check in with you to ensure that you're along the path? Because I don't want to get a call in 6 months. I burned through $100,000, and it's like we are like we're in Mexico. We're not even anywhere near that. So
You're talking about specifically with vendors, with partner vendors that you do for outsourcing?
yeah, anything that we do on the outsource side, and actually now we're starting to do that internally. It's like, hey guys, we're taking on this project. Here's the goal. This is where we need to go. And then here are the milestones, the checking points that we're gonna check in. And we're gonna initially, for the first like 6 to 8 weeks, we're checking in on a weekly basis. We want to know, hey, because the first step is the most difficult. So, hey, did you start? Did you start? Yep, okay, I started. All right, great. Are you on the right path? Are there any roadblocks, anything unexpected? And initially just kind of manage it, hold accountability in the first 4 weeks or so. And then after that, just kind of go in like a longer cycle, but like, all right, you got it covered. Go do it. Get us to the destination.
That's a really
But I
important
think a lot of
conversation
people
about
like
that
miss that.
project journey. Super important conversation. Whatever you do, don't wing it. It's not, that's a stressful path to wing it.
Right?
Don't wing it.
Exactly.
No, I love that conversation. And again, that's a lot of detail for people, but we're still talking about discipline. And that's a big part of that. I love that you do that with your project journeys. It's great.
100%. So let's get into the AI conversation. So
Okay, let's do it.
obviously, yeah, a lot is changing. Sometimes I wake up, I'm like, you know what, I'm done with this AI stuff. Like, and then there's it's still not perfect. I have yet to see, voice AI. I think has crushed it, especially in the restaurant side, where it's able to take the orders. It's like 99.9% accurate. I think that use case has been proven, etc. But outside of that, I haven't seen a lot of like things that are like, wow, this is it. Like this is going to be the next big thing within AI. So I'm curious how you guys are looking at that. Have you run across the same experience, or have you been able to leverage AI to make any changes? And if so, what are they?
Okay. It's a great conversation. And I
Let's
know
get
it's,
right in.
let's get right in. It's very top of mind for so many. And I think the starting point is, from my perspective, I use it every single day. My use of it is if I'm going to have a meeting or I'm going to do a presentation or something along those lines, I will prompt it for an outline because it just saves you a lot of time, right? And then I always tell people, please make it your own. Please don't just cut and paste the AI because you can feel that somehow, right? But so I think I'm a pretty cool user. And then all of a sudden I started learning from people who are really experts in the field, and I realized that I'm really kind of an entry level user. So here's what I'm going to say. Um, there is a article. It's about as long as your leg, but it's worth the read. And it was posted on X from a gentleman named Matt Schumer, who is a software architect or software engineer. And he talks about not only the advances of AI in the last, whatever the timeline is, 6 months, recent time, that, things that are happening. For example, the AI engineers are programming AI to create itself. So, in any event, it's kind of, I read this analogy where it said, not as leaders, no matter what type of leader you are, whatever area of the organization you are, whether you're a multi-unit franchisee, a single unit operator, but certainly in executive leadership in an organization, that using AI and teaching all of your people to use AI is similar to when Excel came out. Do we need to teach our people how to use Excel? Yes. I mean, it's something that is going to be as normal as that. But here's where it gets really interesting. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was at the International Franchise Association convention. They do an annual convention, and one of the speakers there, Scott Kozlowski, who's a tech expert and AI expert and so forth, gave 4 sessions. I only attended one of them, but I did get the deck. What was so interesting is it has advanced so much in the last 6 months that it's astonishing. And so we began working on our AI playbook. But here's just a couple of sound bites from his if I have a little bit of runway, that it's a co-working situation between AI and our teams. And secondly, that if you have someone with whatever the IQ is, in his example, it was 110, and you have somebody that becomes really proficient at AI, it's never going to be AI only or human being only. It's really a symbiotic relationship. And those team members within our organizations, including ourselves, that can master the AI to essentially increase your IQ and productivity is a game changer. And a lot of that conversation was the 4 areas of AI, right? Knowledge and computing, human beings cannot do what AI can do. And so let's not try. What human beings can do that AI cannot do is the people piece and the reasoning and the relationships. And so it's kind of a reframe for us that we're working toward is what administrative things, remove the administrative things and the computing type of things, and as much of the data calculation crunching as you can by using AI, so you can spend more time with your team and more time with your franchisees and more time helping your franchisees understand benchmarks and how to be successful and be obsessed about that operator profitability by eliminating a lot of the things that we do on a daily basis that AI can do a zillion times better than us. So we can do the people piece, which I think is more fun, at least for me, for sure, to be able to really be together. So we're taking it very seriously, and a lot of conversation about those who master it early are going to be in a very different business situation in a positive way than the people who simply treat it like just a search engine. It's much more than just a search engine.
I agree, and I think the growth is going to just be it's an exponential growth. It will continue to get better. I think I published an article like 7, 8, 9 years ago. It was discussing um, it was artificial narrow intelligence, which is it's really easy for computers. The gist of it is it's really easy for computers. Mathematical equations, like all these complex things that humans aren't very good at. And then you have artificial general intelligence, which is, is this a cat or a dog? Is this a red or blue, or like more complex things that a human can easily spot? Is this a female or a male, etc.? So then narrow intelligence, then you have general intelligence, and once you mashed the two. And once the computers have figured out, the narrow intelligence a long time ago, the general intelligence is where they were struggling with. But once those two combine, then you go to ASI, which is artificial super intelligence. And at that stage, good kind of luck because if you're not using it, you're totally left behind. But I want to make it actionable and tactical and figure out, like, even internally we're trying to do the same thing. We're consolidating all of our data into a single ERP that we have built in order to take advantage of that, the AI stuff. Like, obviously the number one thing that's most important is garbage in. Everybody says garbage in, garbage out. So you got to have your data structured. It's got to have to be in a single source, or at least it has to be in a way that it can be easily accessed and not partially. Like, integrations, I think, are not going to really work because you can't just pull partially and make a decision based on partial information. We talked about that earlier. You've got to have, you can't have data silos. You're going to have to make the decision on the whole thing. So I'm curious, like, for us, that's what we've done. What have you guys done, and what data are you looking at? What data are you gathering, and how, what's the roadmap for that AI? Or better yet, what's the output that you're looking for in the next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years?
Yeah, I like your shift of the question. We started with, which I strongly encourage everybody to do, whatever the format is for each type of business. We just completed our KPI dashboards across our entire organization. And so, which is very important as we talk about measuring metrics and making sure that our franchisees are successful and that we're successful as well, and measuring that on a regular basis. So that's foundational. I think most organizations have that to a degree. If they don't, then that's a great place to start. But I love the conversation about outcomes. So we're just now entering into it. We use it in different departments in really successful ways. And even on a basic level, you've got like Google Scribe that uses AI to help you with manuals. Manuals usually aren't very much fun for many people. For some it is. I know our training department loves to do it. But the use of AI in that type of a way, and the use of ChatGPT 5.2 paid version, Claude AI paid version. Some people love Grok and some people love Gemini. Word on the street on OpenClaw, I know there was some, issues early on with that, but regardless of the platform, I mean, and we use multiple platforms, but we were using it individually in our various departments, and a lot of it was just, was just prompting for assistance with a particular problem or a particular work product. What we're moving toward now is utilizing it essentially for a system-wide system analysis to be able to optimize. Where are we winning? Where are we challenged? What are those strong recommendations? Our outcome is to have the most optimized system and underlying plans to be able to help us make decisions about how to make ourselves better and how to make our franchisees better. Our franchisees are our focus. Our franchisees are our customer. And so how do we make them better and make our team better? And we're going to utilize it in that way, but we're just stepping into this next level based on new information, because we were mostly using it for search prompting.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think I want to get into like the customer as a franchise side of things. But in terms of AI, I think in the restaurants, there's a big challenge that I think once it's overcome, it will be a game changer because obviously, like, we do quite a few things within the restaurant space, but I always use a couple of examples. One is, like, we do internet and we do redundancy on internet and services, because once that goes down, then you're totally down. And the way that I talk to franchisees or brands, it's like, listen, if I'm trying to order online or call it in and your phones are not working, your internet's not working, the POS is down, I'm not going to wait an hour and then order in an hour. Or I'm not going to order double the amount of food tomorrow because I missed the order today. So, and I started referring to that as unrecoverable revenue. So you have unrecoverable revenue that you lose, that you will, it's totally gone. You'll never ever recover that revenue again.
And
And then
maybe
when you
you lose the
shift,
customer too, right?
Oh, of course, yeah. Just discount that side, assuming that the customer's not gonna come back, or they, or the worse yet, they think they ordered online, the order went through, but they show up to the restaurant and it's like, "Where's my food?" "Oh, sorry, our internet was down, our phones were down, or like POS was down, whatever." Don't care what the problem is. I ordered the food. Give me the food. I gotta go, right? But discounting that side, and then now you get into the AI side. And actually, we were talking with a couple of people around a project like this, and it really dawned on me the importance of making decisions really fast, because the executive I was talking to is leading a 120, 30 unit brand. And he's like, listen, it like we've pumped all of our data in like a big database. Then we've got four people that are crunching numbers. It'll take them about a week and a half to 2 weeks to get the data from the last month, etc. And by the time they deliver it to us and we review it, we're in the third week. And I just don't have time. And my sales are down, let's say 6% to month to date, and now I've only got a week to 10 days to change so that I don't comp negative. And I was like, oh wow, that is a major problem. Like, if you don't fix that, and if you don't get access to that data real time, make that decision on the first week of the month, you're gonna comp negative and you're gonna lose that revenue, and you're totally SOL because you just didn't have the data set, or you weren't able to crunch it fast enough. So I think that's
Very
where the
common.
power of AI will. What's that?
That's very common. Very
I
common.
agree. I think in the restaurant, and the pain in the within the restaurants, it's even worse because it's so time driven. Like, if you don't fix it this week, or if you don't fix it this week, you're done. Like, you're gonna comp negative this week, and then next week, and then like month is over, and it's unrecoverable revenue. That's why it makes restaurants so difficult to run and operate, because you have to capture revenue today. Because if it's gone today, then it's gone. But uh, I think hopefully the shift should be, I think, around, hey, here are the things that happen. Here are the stores that comp negative. Here are the ones that comp positive. Here is the difference. And then here's the recommendation, kind of going back to that 131, so you can quickly make that change. But without having that data, it's going to be impossible to make that decision. So,
That's a super important conversation. It really is, because it's kind of like with the P&Ls, critical to your business, but they usually don't come, depending on your organization, anywhere between the 5th, but for most businesses, a little old school, right around the 15th or 20th of the month, you get your P&Ls. And again, still, you got to keep track of that rolling P&L to know the health of your organization and the trending. But that daily and weekly reporting is so critical. Now, in our brand, we instituted a scorecard for each one of our restaurants that has all the KPIs on a unit by unit basis. And it's amazing. And the franchisees love that. It's the one tool that they just gravitate to. Who doesn't want to know in one snapshot all the things that are happening? When we first started it, manual, everything was manual, building out tables in Google Drive and all these types of things. And it's still the foundation for the data. But we got it to be from a once a month scorecard to it'll populate every 24 hours. But our next level, as an example, is it's a wonderful tool. It's a very meaningful tool. It's a very actionable tool, to your point about saying, oh, what happened today? And oh, now I can adjust this lever. And why is my food cost higher? What happened with my labor? Oh, it rained, and all the things. But it's still manual for us. So I think for us, having a really data rich environment is to be able to, without it getting too crazy and messy, because that can happen quickly too. Maybe you'll have me on a year from now and ask me what happened with our AI advancements. But for us, it's being able to automate as much as possible. And I know that word gets thrown around a lot, but it's a very real thing. You have all this manual data, and when you have 120 or 130 units, it's manageable. You have 200 units and 300 and 500, but even when you have 30 units, to manually crunch all that stuff that takes all these people to do it, there's a better way, and we're going to find what that is.
okay, great. So let's. I want to jump into one thing that you mentioned. You said franchisees as the customer. Tell me what you mean by that.
Well, one could say that in a restaurant business, our consumer is our customer, which technically they are, but literally it's a mindset about everything we do, we think about the franchisee. Now, remember, I started in the brand as an operator, as a franchisee. And so that gives me a really unique position to think about the decisions that are made. But when we focus on the franchisee as the customer and put them first, we're talking about profitability, operational consistency, and then which leads to growth in our brand. But if we're able to give all the tools and great coaching and focus on our franchisee support, they will then in turn deliver that to our consumer and give that great experience to our consumer. It's really what we're really talking about here is culture. What is your culture? We speak a lot about community. We always have. Now we add a big conversation about performance to that. If you don't say the word performance, then, that was kind of the trap we got in. We love our community so much. Our team, our franchisees, our consumers, and our outside communities, of course. These are our core values. But we also talk about performance. But when we put our franchisee first, and by the way, none of us are perfect. You have everybody from different backgrounds and different walks of life and different levels of motivation. But that is what we talk with our team about, especially our field teams that have the most interaction with them. They are the conduit between the corporate office, obviously, and our franchisees. We have district meetings, we have a national advisory council, and all that type of a thing. But it's really a mindset that, and we talk about it with the team. Franchisee is the customer. How do we make them successful? Because if the franchisees are successful, everybody is successful in a franchise business.
I agree 100%. So, and then you guys are taking a regional director or regional developer approach. Why go that route versus just, a traditional method of just franchising out to individual groups?
Yeah, I mean, that's really an acceleration conversation, right? Uh, I share this with the team a lot, just conceptually. It's easy to forget. So it's an accelerated growth model. And again, it's not for everyone. It's a fierce way to grow for sure. And, it has a lot of intensity associated with it. Awesomeness, but intensity. Um, Imagine, whether it's 20, whatever, pick a number, do the math. If it's 20 regional developers and they each are responsible for building 20 restaurants. But even if they had 3 franchisees, they could just bring in 3 franchisees without really much ado. That's already 60 units. Now, I'm not suggesting, our big time delay is finding the piece of real estate and building it and so on. So there's a big pipeline there and a big gestation period. But again, all of a sudden that it becomes exponential very quickly. And when you have regional developers that are very motivated, and depending on their experience with development and restaurants and so on, we've got varying degrees of experience level, or, your mumbos, your multi-unit, multi-brand operators who have big infrastructure and all of that, that we're now that we're really headlong into our national expansion, are getting very excited about what Port of Subs offers. We have an exciting threshold of or inflection point of heritage, legacy, brand, and proven system with a national expansion and a lot of open space. And that's very appealing to some of these larger operators. So, but again, it's a great way to have a high accelerated growth while still having the community roots and keeping the soul of our brand intact as we scale in that type of a way.
Interesting. Okay, amazing. Yeah. That's a different approach than most usually take, but I was curious why you guys have chosen that path. Is there anything? Who's your ideal regional director, or is it still open, or have you sold the entire country? Where should people find you, and where should people learn more about Port of Subs?
Yes, of course. Well, the nice traditional way, portofsubs.com franchising. Um, I have a separate email that I use, Healey, Healey, at portofsubs.com. We are in 9 new markets, but we have basically there are 60 markets that are available. We look for restaurant experience. Now, not everybody who's a regional developer has restaurant experience, but that comes with its own challenges. Um, they need to be very engaged. You have to have a certain level of capitalization, because what you're doing is you're building your own infrastructure to be almost like a mini franchisor. We provide the systems and the tools and the guidance and the opportunity to succeed, but it really is um, it's a larger opportunity. This is not a single unit opportunity. This is someone who has business acumen, who's very engaged, who loves our brand, and with food experience. And we're very excited about some of the groups that are joining us now that have other brands, coffee and pizza and things that go really well with the sandwich category that we're very excited about.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, it's been a joyful conversation. I love getting in and talking about this stuff. I think restaurant industry is absolutely ready for some exponential growth in the next few years. Hey, Healy, it's been a pleasure. I love having these conversations with fellow CEOs and especially in the restaurant industry. I believe that there's an exponential room for growth in the next 5 years. And I believe those who master the technology, who have figured out the product fit, the service fit, will absolutely crush it. And I've said this publicly that I think by end of the decade, there'll be at least a handful of billionaires that are made in the restaurant industry, which typically everybody ignores and says, no, it's a very tough industry. It's got a lot of different challenges. But I think now with the technology shift that's coming in, it's going to completely change the dynamics in the restaurant industry. Any final closing remarks on your side?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. And let's win in franchising.
Absolutely. Thank you.